Greetings, Space Cadets, and thank you for joining Captain Dan the Cavalryman, aka Dr. Dan. I wanted to talk to you with the whiteboard today and share with you a little bit about a video that's been circulating around indoctrinating our children. It's called The Story of Stuff. And I've got another story called The Story of Things. Okay. The little story of stuff comes out and they put little trees. I'm not the greatest artist in the world. On top of a mountain. And then they say the things or stuff comes from natural resources. They go to factories and they put a factory. Of course, they put a big smokestack on top there. And then they said, oh, this nasty pollution comes out of there. And then they put a little storefront like your local area Walmart. We'll put a big W on it. And then they put your house. The reality of it is they say the stuff comes from here and goes to here. And the thing that's missing is people. So they add their little stick figures of people. And they say it's the people. And then they tell you that the people are bad. Because people are the problem. Yes, that's what they say. But in reality, the thing is this. I'm going to share with you the story of things from the truth. Mr. Tree here does not get cut down because Mr. Tree's brother tree was cut down on Select Cut. And Select Cut out in the mountains where the real people live, on top of the mountains with the trees. They are so responsible and so unevil that they want to make sure that there's more trees and more acorns falling off the trees to fall into the ground so more trees can grow up. That they do what's called Select Cut. It's called forestry management. Okay? And under EPA laws and other laws that the government illegally oppresses people with, you can't just cut all the trees down. Or you can't just blow all the mountains up like they say in the video. You can't just flatten the mountains and turn them into flatland because there is a reclamation act in states like the state I live in Pennsylvania where if you get all the coal that's underneath the ground here and you strip mine for it, you have to rebuild the mountain. By the same token, there are also other laws and moral codes that are not laws that are done by the local oil companies to frack the oil out of the land when they drill down underneath the land with a pipe. Here's the water table. Way deep down, far, far beyond the water table. We're talking like thousands of feet of difference, thousands and thousands of feet of difference. There's a little pocket of oil here, okay? Some of it's in the shale rock. And so what they do is, unbeknownst to the communist dictator, lying Democrat, subversive story, George Soros story of stuff, they must put a casing pipe down below the water table. Then they drill down to this area here and they use salt water and sand. Salt water and sand along with diesel fuel and fertilizer to create an explosion in here. The salt water, which is already present at this level. Already present at this level because there was once a flood. And therefore, there's a lot of what they call brine water, salt water, in there. Now, because of all the complaints about fracking, the companies now are not using the salt water, which is already present in the ground at this level. Minerals and salts are basically the same, mineral waters. So they use a food additive instead, which is the same thing that you can legally consume and is in many of the soft drinks and foods that you already eat and drink. So they put that down there and they explode it, and it goes into the rock here. It never goes into the water table here. It goes into the ground here. But it's all consumable, biodegradable, safe for human consumption that they put in there, which doesn't make sense. But to appease the environmental nutcases that don't understand what fracking is, they do that. Now, when they do that, they bring the oil up to the surface to a little pump. The pump has tanks there, and the tanks contain the oil, and no oil spills out on the ground. And this is a good thing in the area where I live, and in many other areas where there's oil. And let me tell you why. Because in the mountains, in the valleys, where most of the people are living at, there are these things called swamps. And swamps and bogs have lots of life and trees. And what happens if we don't frack and get the oil up is the pressure from the earth. And this is the way it was when I was a kid back in the 1960s in this area. The pressure from the earth and the molten lava rock down below in the other layers pushes upward. And when it does, it pushes against the oil in the rock. And the oil does what's called seepage, and it comes up at the least point of resistance. That least point of resistance is the bogs and the swamps that are in the valleys of the mountains. When I was a boy, you could go to the bog right down the road from where I live at now, and it was full of oil. And that oil caused the little birdies to get oil on their wings. And it caused the plants to have oil on the plants. And it limited the natural plant growth that happened here. It was a natural environmental action happening because there wasn't enough oil being drawn out of here, so through seepage it came up here. Okay? Now, let's get to the story of stuff, now that you understand that. The oil comes out here, and then it's taken by truck. And the truck uses biodiesel fuel, which means when you go to the fast food restaurant or something like that, you have your food fried in oil, which is a natural vegetable substance like corn oil, and then they turn that into diesel fuel instead of pouring it back out in the environment to pollute Mr. Tree here. Okay? And they truck it into the oil refinery that has a giant concrete base built underneath the whole refinery to ensure that the oil does not go into the ground soil whatsoever. And they have giant tanks that have giant containment centers like that. Someday I may take my video camera and go down to the refinery down the street. And I guarantee you, my oil well, or my water well, which is here, has no oil in it. Because the oil refinery down the street and all these wells have casing that demands by environmental protection that it not get the water table and the oil mixed together. And it doesn't. Okay? Now, they take the oil to the refinery refines the oil and pulls out the diesel fuel and the kerosene and the jet fuel and the car fuel that you burn in your car. And part of it is tar, which makes the roads that you drive on comes from oil. And all that plastic crap, that oil goes to the factory. And Mr. Factory Man hires people at a wage and a living that use that money to feed their families. And they use it to go to the stores and buy food and stuff. Okay? Mr. Factory turns all that plastic into crap that they sell you and market to you. Okay? And then when you buy more stuff from the store to put in your house for your little kitties, the store makes money. The factory makes money. And the people in the woods make money. And that's the story of things. This whole thing is called capitalism. It's based on a reward system where you make things and stuff by the means of production. And by the people owning the means of production, we're able to keep the supply line flowing to you at home so you in the city can continue to eat food and have stuff. Your job working at the store, working at the factory, is just a just reward and righteous payment for the work and labor that you do. So let's see what indoctrination, the story of stuff, really wants you to believe. They want you to believe that Mr. Earth is fine, and that Mr. Earth is good, and Mr. Person's bad. Yeah. And that by doing this, that Mr. Person is evil. And because Mr. Person's evil and he doesn't understand what to do, and here's where the crux of the matter comes in. They say Mr. Government, who they want to portray as a tank, Mr. Government, that Mr. Government has to have all the control. That's why they put him in a tank. Because they're communists. Communists believe in the mutual inherent sharing of poverty, where the people produce nothing and are justly rewarded with the poverty by redistributing the wealth of those who have the means of production to those who do nothing and have nothing, because they do nothing but consume stuff. And since the people are evil, according to George Soros, mean Mr. Government in the tank has to control everything, including the means of production, so that Mr. Bad Human does not have the means to get stuff. And see, what happens is once Mr. Government controls the bread lines, then Mr. Government kiddies can control everything about you, because if you don't comply with Mr. Government's BS, then Mr. Government won't let you eat. And that's the story of the truth and the story of things. We make things and are justly rewarded in a capitalistic republic for our good labors by owning good things and eating good food, because the inherent nature of people is a good conscience. But stupid people in the city who are Democrats think the inherent nature of people, especially the bad people out here in the environment who live in the mountains in the red state area, are programming you to get stuff. Well, if you disagree and you go along with George Soros and his program, then certainly I invite you to stop eating. This is Captain Dan, the PhD man, signing out. And that's the story of things, just in case you wanted to know. And even if you didn't want to know, take your commie butt and get off my Facebook page.